Hello, and welcome to the Green Team of the Legendarium, the weird little spinoff where patrons of the Legendarium get together to discuss the books and topics the main crew haven't gotten around to yet. I'm Little Red Book, and today I have with me the Overlord saving us from all the nasty threads, Kyptan.
Hello.
And special guest, the General of the Rough Riders, Ryan of the Legendarium.
Hello, everyone. Welcome. Welcome.
At this ungodly early hour of the day, we are going to be discussing Anne McCaffrey's 1979 book, Dragonsdawn, the 9th book in the Dragonriders of Pern. So, just to start off, on a 5-star scale, how would you rate this book?
A solid 3.
Oh, good. I was afraid I was going to be coming in a little low, because that's about where I would put it too. Yeah, about a 3.
Yeah, it's very enjoyable, but it's not groundbreaking or it didn't blow me away. You know, it was a fun read.
It's definitely enjoyable, but it gets more enjoyable. It takes you a while to get to the part where you enjoy, for me at least. I was sitting here going, I feel like I'm reading like science notes on things up until we finally started to get to about where the thread started falling. And I'm like, oh, okay. Like if I wanted to do this, I'd just go play Animal Crossing or something for a few hours. But
it did feel a bit like the early stages of civilization beyond Earth at the start.
Yeah.
And there are so many names.
So many names.
Yes.
Look, I know that there's like 100 or whatever. I don't know even how many colonizers, but there's only so many people you can keep track of.
Yeah. You have 6,000 people on a ship. Please don't try to name them all.
Right.
There's only so many like second assistant veterinarians you can try and keep track of.
I've only ever read, I think, one other of the Pern books, and it was years and years ago, so I forgot everything anyway. I'm wondering how much of this is supposed to be like setting up lineage lines of people going for like, oh yeah, so you know that this is the grandmother or the grandfather of this character that you'll deal with later, or things like that. Because I was like, this is a lot of people for me to try and keep track of or to care about, and I already hate Ted Tupperman, so let's go ahead and move on past that anyway.
You already hate Ted Tupperman from like his very first scene.
Oh yeah.
His like first defining characteristic is a contemptuous scowl.
And I don't want any of you guys to think I hated this book because I actually really enjoyed it, but it's just it has issues. That's okay.
I think that's totally fair, and it's one of those things. I would actually say that if you held this book up against other books written in its time frame, it wouldn't feel too off from the style and things that were being written in the late 70s, early 80s time frame.
Yep.
So it fits there. It just, especially to a modern audience, I would not hand this one to someone as a first book for Pern and be like, this is what's going to get you locked into Anne McCaffrey's writings. I would not do that. Not because it's a bad book, simply because it's not going to catch a modern audience quite the same way as maybe one of the later books might have a little more of a fantasy feel that will give them a better connecting point for what they're going to get into versus a little more of the logic and science behind how Pern came to be what it is.
I think I've read other Pern books. Pretty sure I read the one that involves time travel because there's one that has time travel.
There's not just one.
Okay. Well, either way, I actually like this one better than...
Really?
Yeah.
I like this one definitely better than like the first 3 Pern books, for sure.
Yeah. I've only read a couple other Pern books.
I've read most of them. And until they started getting co-written, I've read them all.
So let me ask you this as someone who does not remember or doesn't have the same connection to other Pern books. What are kind of the defining characteristics of a Pern book that we can see in this one or that we see set up here, other than, let's just say, Dragon Riders?
I mean, that's one of the pretty big ones. But the empathic bond and the different colors of dragons. Those are two of the very big ones. The other is the internal politics and the politics between Dragon Riders and other groups.
Okay.
Those are always very big.
Yeah, that becomes in the one that the other series, like the other trilogy I read, that was huge. Like the other people were super angry and didn't want to support the Dragon Riders anymore because they were so expensive because they had forgotten about the thread. And then the thread shows up again.
Oh, that sounds convenient.
Of course, though. And that's why there's time travel. I mean, it's...
That is the very first Dragon Riders of Pern book, yeah.
Okay, so yeah. That's the trilogy I've read.
And what else is essential? Oh, some sort of intense, emotional, bonded romantic relationship between a man and a woman.
Oh, okay. I did it. So obviously, like most of the things, I've listened through this on audiobook, and I'm gonna say the performance of the narrator when what's his first? What is his name? He becomes Telgar. It's
Harvey.
Anyway, yeah. His whole speech about I am Telgar now, and like I was like, wow, dude,
that came out of nowhere.
This is it. This is impassioned. He gives his great loving. I'm going to say loving in air quotes here.
We're
speech
not
to her.
Spoilers.
We're not in spoilers yet, but yeah.
Okay. There's an impassioned speech. When we get into spoilers, he gives a great line in that. So
to your point of establishing lineages down the road, Telgar is a big one.
Yeah. I kind of figured that would be the case.
Yeah. Telgar is a big important name in the later series. It's the name of a place too.
Oh.
It is.
Yeah.
I do remember that. So normally we do books in publishing order, but we're not this time. So why are we starting with this book? This is a question from both Solution and Heron Fan.
Because I didn't want to start with the first one, which has graphic rape of small children.
Yeah, I forgot about that. Thanks. Yeah, and McCaffrey has issues.
She really loves her May-December romances, and sometimes the May is like 14.
Ooh, that's. I appreciate the heads up on that. I feel like that should be like a book tag or something. It involves questionable sexual encounters with minors.
But isn't that like super, super common just in the genre at that time?
Yeah, I would say to a certain extent it is.
She does it more than most people.
It stands out more so.
It does.
Again and again.
Yep, again and again and again. And like sometimes it will be lethal for the younger partner and whatever. Okay.
Jeez. Like I said, I actually would start with this book. It's the only book that I really like. The first third of it is a little dragging, but it tries to be sciencey. It's not super hard science, but I just prefer
more hard science than a lot.
Well, then it's also more sciencey than the other ones. The other ones are actually fantasy.
But like you have consideration of fuel consumption. You have
exactly
matching of orbital trajectories. You have pre-flight checklists in the shuttles. You have genetic engineering.
A little too much of the pre-flight. How did we land on this, starting with this book? Anyway, Ryan, do you remember?
I think we were just going through and we were talking about McCaffrey, and I think Kip threw out a couple of them, and we were looking at Dragonsdawn, and a couple of them we said this is the actual start of the time frame. And I think this actually, if you know the audience that you're going to recommend this to, or if you as a listener know that you're the sort of person who will read a whole series and will get invested in things, it's okay to start with this chronologically speaking, because you're going to get through and get a full feel of Pern from this moment on. But if you're trying to test out whether or not you would like to be in this world, this isn't a good sample plate to take it from. To me, it might be one of the better ones, but I wouldn't. This is not the book I would hand to someone to say get a good feel for Pern. But like I said, if you're gonna read the whole thing and you're gonna do that, yeah, by all means, start and follow the chronology. It'll make it. It'll be a slightly different story.
Yeah, it's the sci-fi start to the Pern series as opposed to the fantasy start to the Pern series.
Yeah.
So, what did you like or dislike about the setup of the book and the 3 separate parts, the landing, the thread, and the crossing? And without spoilers, how do you feel about the arrangement of the book? There's too many names, but generally speaking,
I honestly really like this format for colonial starts because it does let you get some time skips in out of the way, and you don't have to spend all of your time just scrounging around in the muck on the planet's surface in this completely undeveloped world, living in prefab units for the entire book. Which is a blessing.
This 3 breakup in this is a really good setup for this type of book. Most books have the standard Act 1, Act 2, Act 3 thing through the arc, but this one legitimately actually says intermission right in between these moments, and that can be helpful. Yeah, it's and to a reader to know, like Kip was saying, it allows you the time jumps to give a very clear sense to your audience that everything that you just heard is its own little piece. Be aware of it, but now we're moving on to the next thing is helpful. I would love stronger arcs inside of each of these mini ones, because there's kind of the arc of the whole crew, colonizing of Pern and figuring out how to survive type thing, but inside of each of the individual ones, there's not really. And when we get to spoilers again, that's
this is
one
the
does not have arc. One does not have much of an arc.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, they're just surviving.
You set up a couple relationships, but there's no real plot elements that have any sort of conclusion in arc 1.
Right.
But you get the dragons the
dragons,
the dragonettes at the very end.
You get a character introduction. And you have a vague idea of whatever colors they have, and then we move on.
Yeah, so I gotta say I enjoyed this book a lot more when I read it before I was gonna read it for reviewing. Podcast has ruined my enjoyment of Pulp Fiction.
That is absolutely a real hazard to doing stuff like this and constantly reviewing, because it gets hard to turn that off and be like, I'm just going to enjoy this or do it others. It is absolutely the reality.
But no, I like the structure of the book, and I think that it does what it needs to do well for what it is. But I agree with Ryan about the arc thing.
I've seen this structure done better. And also I do feel like part 1 was rushed for what it tried to do, which was the entire approach of the planet and the initial colonization effort. That could have been a whole book.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It really, I kind of feel like this should have been 2 books and not 1 book. But
I think you actually, I think you're right that it absolutely could have been. And
the way it was written, I don't agree that it would have been a good book.
Yeah. That's the point right there. It needs some serious adjustment if you're going to do that.
In another author's hand, I've seen that section of the plot line do so much better and take quite a bit longer. Because if you're going to be doing any sort of credible job of exploring a new planet before deciding your landing place, you might give it more than an hour or 2.
Yeah. I mean, I'm trying to sit through and think about any examples of similar developing from the beginning, because usually we come in from a character's perspective into something that is still developing. Usually it would be like we follow Sorka, and when she lands on the planet, she looks around and sees what has been established, and we kind of explore through that. That isn't the case here because we have too many other perspectives, so we kind of get it from the get-go. I would be curious to see what this would look like if it was that we follow Sorka down on there and we see that, we've set up this and this is how you requisition things, and kind of go from that path.
That would have been lovely.
Yeah, no, I agree. Like having 1 or 2 characters that we were following closely would have been easier to deal with than there's too many. I mean, there's I don't know, at least 10.
I don't think we needed Admiral Bendon at all.
No,
I don't think we needed his POV at all.
He can be in the story, sure, but we don't need to be in his head ever.
It is a major undertaking to try and write an entire civilization as your character POVs, and that's I bet you bite off more than you can chew with this, quite frankly. And Admiral could go. There's probably a couple others that could have been done through the eyes of a different character, through a Sorka or a Sala or whatever.
I don't think we needed Avril, honestly.
Don't even get
that
me
was another one that through Sala. You could easily have told her story through Sala.
Exactly.
Let her play Scooby-Doo with the clues that she's dropping behind, and then...
Is it maybe time to go into spoiler territory?
It is. It's totally time.
Okay.
Spoilers, everyone. I'm going to do a quick recap that is not going to be Ken level, so sorry, Ryan.
That's okay. I don't get a lot of those anyway, so...
It's true. Colonists land on Pern, hoping to establish a new type of human order free from hierarchy. 8 years in, a rogue planet enters into close proximity of Pern's orbit, and strange organisms the colonists name Thread drop from the sky and devour organic material on contact. Tiny fire-breathing lizard-like creatures Adopted first by two precocious adolescents, fight the thread, and the genetic scientists begin engineering the little dragonettes into dragons of Earth-like mythology. Political intrigue, romance, and fighting for life. And oh, all the names. So I really have, this is something I kind of wanted to ask Kip while I was reading this. Does it make, I don't feel like having thread dropped on your planet every 200 years is going to have a planet that has complex life on it, which this planet really does. And I don't know. What do you think about that?
I was very confused by the description of Threadfall, which was in these long corridors which cover basically the entire planet, with the survey results which were like, there are polka dots.
Yeah. Right?
It was never described as a round phenomenon after that initial survey again.
But, I mean, how does life even evolve on this planet if every 200 years crap's getting dropped on it that eats everything?
Well, if every 200 years it only removes like little circles, that's fine. Who cares? But if every 200 years it completely devastates the terrain, covering everything in like microbial death, then no, that's a huge problem.
You would have to basically put everything
in the ocean.
In the ocean, deep enough underground that it would like you would discover all the life exists in these safe zones, nothing up on top, and that's not the case. They clearly have life that does grow and that does it. So unless you made a point of saying that everything grows incredibly fast on Pern, like that things develop super fast because it's evolved to know that if it doesn't, it won't last long enough because it's going to get burned out. But I don't recall anything that signals that whatsoever. Like anything that's accelerated or anything like that is all done through human sciences.
I will say there's one thing that leads me to believe that Pern has adapted slightly to the threat, and it's that they mention that a lot of the animal life, or the vegetable life, has high levels of boron in its tissues.
Okay.
Which makes me believe that maybe there's some seed capsules that are entirely covered in boron, which would protect Fred.
Got it. That is
a stretch.
If as an author you're writing that and being like, my audience will understand that, I'm like, you better be writing it to a very specific audience because
that's the thing. The things that are explained in like I didn't need that detail are like HNO3 shortens to Ageno3 when she hears it. That didn't need to be explained. People could have read that.
Yeah.
I just feel like that the thread and the interaction with Pern it's not addressed well. It just isn't. It doesn't make sense. And it really bothered me this time I read the book. I didn't care the first time I read the book, but this time I was like, this makes no sense. There would be no plant life. There would be stuff in the ocean, sure, but that's it.
Yeah,
we'd have mermaids instead of dragons.
Yeah. maybe you could explain that like one stage of the life cycle of the seaweed is aerial spores, which then drift over land and then reseed the barren wilderness.
That would be an interesting take. That your land life would have a very aquatic feel to it, kind of off the top there.
Yeah. Well, anyway,
but it didn't happen.
It didn't. No,
I know.
That's
actually read. It did not happen. No, the vegetation makes no sense.
It was very distracting. I'm sorry. It was just something that really bothered me about the whole thing.
And I would have loved if there was an exodus of the wild animal life into the oceans before Threadfall. I would have loved that.
That would have been cool.
If the Pernese inhabitants had been tracking strange new migration patterns as the Red Star grew closer. I would have loved that.
Would have been cool.
But no, they entirely did not notice.
It didn't make any sense.
They just freak out when it starts happening.
Yeah.
And thank goodness for those cute little dragons with their fire breath. What do you think about the political intrigues that are set up? The weird missing fuel, the charter members versus the colonizers. There's a lot going on.
I think that when someone has stolen an interplanetary homing missile and sent out a message to Earth, which is going to place your colony in huge debt and completely revoke your whole charter in 50 to 100 years or 500 years when they finally get around to coming for you. Maybe the appropriate punishment isn't shunning.
That was the whole shunning sequence. I thought was interesting. I appreciate the alternative approach to. That's one of the stronger elements of this book, I think, is showcasing an alternative way of governing and ruling, and trying to remove some of the violent tendencies that can be in there, of different styles of punishment and everything. So how do you deal with this? Well, they talk earlier on about how they're going to people who are guilty of breaking this kind of code that they have will be forced to labor in certain ways and do things like that. Like this is a little bit of a paradise idea, or
oh yeah, for sure.
It's way too early in the morning to try and think of the word I'm thinking of.
Utopia.
Utopia, thank you.
Which is no place, by the way. Literally means no place.
Yeah.
Yep.
They're trying to set up this utopia, and obviously when they are forced, they get to the point and the rubber meets the road and they absolutely have to do a capital punishment type thing because of pulling a stunt like that. How do you do that and maintain without going into the violence of past humanity and the things that they complain about on past Earth of, the technocrats and the, ruling through greed and all these other things that are problematic. How do you avoid that coming in through your punishment system? And I was like, the shunning is interesting, but I do think you could have done more to the guy. I mean, it is Ted Tupperman we're talking about here.
Yeah, like maybe a seizure of all of his advanced bioengineering materials that he'd stolen.
Right. No, but I don't like it. I like it as a story element. I don't like it. I mean, he literally is it just felt like, well, we don't like him anyway, so now we don't have to talk to him anymore.
That is indeed what it felt like. It also felt like this punishment was come up with on the fly by Emily Bowl.
Yeah. It was.
But yeah, the idea of completely unlimited sovereignty on your stakehold, whatever you want to do on your stakehold, it's fine.
And then I'm just going to create monster cats.
And then I'm going to create monster cats, but I am also going to abuse my family.
Well, right. Like,
and
they don't do anything about that.
That's where that sort of like limited autonomy, basically, that's feudalism, right?
Yep. Yeah, it is. It's very weird.
And it does not have a great record with women's rights. Like, human rights in general are not respected under feudalism.
I don't think there's any point in history where you can look back and say, you know what, the time wasn't great for everybody, but the women really had it solid as serfs.
That's true. We got screwed so much.
Enjoy your fiefdom, women. Oh, wait a minute. You don't get one.
Oh, wait a minute. Yeah, no, you don't get one.
I don't know. It kind of
This is the man's land.
It does kind of work out for Elizabeth I. She was a pretty badass queen.
That is true. Bucking the trend. Yeah.
But it is.
Sure. If you're royalty, you can be an exception.
Yes. That's the way it always is, though, for all royalty. I mean, it wasn't great for men under serfdom either, unless you had a title.
Nope.
Welcome to Women's Rights in the Feudalism podcast here.
The funny thing is, that's what we were talking about on the podcast we did with the girls.
Oh, really? Continuing our trend, feminism through the ages.
Feminism through the ages. Hey, look, this story has gay people in it, or at least it has slight mentions of them.
Yes.
Yeah, that was weird too. That there was like, but at the same time, they're required to get married and have children. Like, that's part of being in the colony.
Yes, and you could lose your stake if you didn't.
Right.
Which, you could lose your entire autonomy in this world. Because if you don't have a stake, you're at the mercy of people who do.
If you're colonizing a planet and you're choosing to come, it kind of makes sense to require people to reproduce because you're trying to colonize.
That's it.
If you want to...
Do you really want maximum population growth in a colony that you're just imbuing with technological and agricultural resources? Do you want an explosion or do you want measured increases?
I think that makes sense. That part does make sense to me. I mean, you're trying to colonize a planet.
I'll tell you what biology has agreed on. Biology has said, no, 10% is going to be non-reproductive.
Okay.
I think this is an area that, if this book was written today, would be deserving of more exploration, to maybe go through a storyline of an LGBT character or something like that and say, I don't want to have to be a part of the reproduction setup this way. I don't want to be required to do this. and you can explore what that means and why it's set up the way it is. Because to Little Red's point, like, it is understandable that we need to survive and we need to reproduce to help populate this. But to Kip's point, how many have to do that in order for us to not outpace our own resources?
What I would say is that these are the people who are signing on, so they know that they're signing on to this. You know what I'm saying? Not for the entire planet, for all of history or whatever, but the people who are.
But like, some of them are signing on to get diamonds. Some of them are signing on.
God, that girl. That whole thing makes no sense. There are how many millions of miles away, light years away from. But I'm just gonna hop on the ship and go to this other planet because I stole fuel.
So I can steal jewels and then steal the ship and go back and be filthy rich. You can literally build an entire, like, claim huge tracts of land here. Like, you have whatever you want.
She wants her warm showers. She wants hot showers and video entertainment.
It's like, why did you even sign on? Like, what are you doing?
Just for the money, apparently. Just to betray everyone and get the money.
Yeah, that is a lot of work to be able to have a hot shower when you can just stay there and do the terrible thing as a human being and sell your grandmother's heirloom that she gave you. The giant would be like, you'd probably be okay selling that and then working for a living or something. I know that's a big question, a big task.
That's the funny thing. Like, she worked there for 8 years before she decided to put her escape attempt into motion.
Yeah. Today seems like a good day to go kill a couple people and leave. I've got enough jewels now.
It's such a weird plot line. I know what starts it off, though, is because she thought she was going to marry the general and be basically queen.
The queen. Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. And she didn't, because he found out she was a terrible person.
I think he always knew, but the sex was good, so he didn't care.
Her perspective on that's quite funny. Like, one day he stopped paying attention to me. I don't understand why. And we're like, well, we know you as a person, and that's why. Like, it's not really not that big of a stretch. Maybe a little self-awareness, and you'd figure it out.
And we get in his head, and he was like, yeah, the sex was good, but I probably shouldn't have done it anyway.
Yeah.
I shouldn't have let her on. She's fine to have as a character. We don't need to ever be in her head. Not once. She is.
We don't need to be in her head. If anything, like, the slightly less reprehensible people would have been better to get inside the heads of and then view their interactions with her. So, like, Steve Kemmer, right? We could have been inside his head. He was better than Avril.
The other option is that you need to, if you're going to tell it, you have to expand her story to be a heavier piece in the main storyline versus this side plot. Like, we don't need the point of view of a side plot character. But if you make her a main piece, like, I don't think this is a good call, but it's the only other way I can see that you keep her as a point of view and make it fit in there is by making her a larger narrative piece of the whole thing, which then probably pushes, like, Sala and that one a little more to the background to maintain some sort of balance.
Yeah.
I did like Sala, by the way, as a character.
I was sad when she was gone.
For a story about the origin of the Dragon Riders, we get so little Sorka until the end.
Uh-huh.
So little Sorka and Sean.
Right at the beginning as kids, just a touch during the thread, and then everything else at the end.
Yeah. And when we meet them in the thread, we only get, like, this retrospective on their relationship.
Mm-hmm.
That we get no pining, no buildup of the relationship. It's just, it's happened, it's established, and we're done.
Yeah. 2 relationship sequences in here that made me laugh, eye roll, whatever it is. And one of them is when Sorka and Sean, when he admits his love for her, when she finds out she's pregnant, and he's like, why didn't you tell me about it? Am I the last one to know? No, you're the only other one to know except for, like, the doctor. Like, calm down, dude. And then and he's like, I want you to bear only my children. And everyone's like, yeah, okay, dude. Like,
that is the other thing about McCaffrey novels, controlling men.
This was, like, there's been no real build up to this other than her saying,
I knew that they were going to be together when they found the dragons together.
Yes.
I knew
Of course.
Like,
of course. So obvious. It's telegraphed.
It's like,
it would just be nice to be it would be nice if there was more romance on the way up to this point. Because the other one is Sala and
Tarvi.
Tarvey.
Yeah.
And his response when she's like, come back. No, you can't. No, I just realized you're more than a vessel for my seed. That
Oh my
line.
god. Oh my god.
I was like, wow.
I would be like, you.
The bar is this low right here, and you just barely eked over that. Yes, I love you. You're more than a vessel for my seed. You are worthy of love. I'm like, oh god, are you serious right here?
And she basically is miserable their whole relationship because
Their whole relationship.
She pines after him and pines after him and pines after him. And
I think he's asexual.
I actually thought he was gay at first in the first part of the book. When I did
too.
I think he's asexual.
Yeah,
that makes sense.
But whatever, she is there taking care of your kids and being a vessel for your seed. You could at least say "I love you" every once in a while. Jeez, it's not hard.
She makes a mention of how if she leaves the initiative up to him, nothing happened for a year, and then she got so desperate she started her dawn attacks.
Yep. I will be referring to morning sex as that from here on out for the rest of my life. Incoming morning attack! Ah!
Oh, jeez.
Very romantic. I'm sure it will be well received.
I mean, more romantic than this.
Yes. More the romances aren't romantic at all. Like, there's nothing romantic about any of them. It's so weird.
Nothing.
And
I think that would be an interesting aspect of this colonization that probably is occurring with other people there, but very much at the beginning of their colonization, it feels a lot like there's not a romance to the pairing off for reproduction. There isn't really. It's you kind of choose somebody. Like, they could have literally just thrown keys in a bowl and just said, "All right, everybody, let's go," and go from there.
Feels like that's what some of them did.
Yeah.
And they say, like, yeah, some of these marriages are just going to last a couple years. They're contract marriages. They have a defined like end date in them.
Right.
Which is so weird.
It goes along with the rest of the political structure.
Yeah. But there are couples that come, like couples that sign in together, like the vet and his wife, Dorcas parents.
Yeah.
They're already a couple.
Red Hammerhand.
Yeah, and their relationship seems fine, and they have a lovely daughter, and they have like a lovely. We don't get the son.
Well, they do have one. I'm just saying.
They have one. We never see
it.
Him.
Exists.
He exists in the background somewhere.
Yeah.
Well, he shows up at the end when they're doing the transportation thing with the dragons. Like,
I don't mean we literally never see him, but we
don't see him really. No.
What can you say about him?
He's an engineer, I think. I'm pretty sure.
Great. He got a job by part 3.
Anyway, so there are normal relationships, but there's no good romance, if that makes sense. Like,
there's no good coming together. There was supposed to be Tarvey and Sala, but that was just so weird.
Even from the get-go.
From the get-go, she drugged him with an aphrodisiac that the pharmacist swore would work. And I want to know if that pharmacist was practicing placebo medicine, but I don't know.
I kind of felt that way, that the drug was a placebo. It wasn't real. Like, oh, sure, here, have the thing.
The willingness with which they just started ingesting native Pernese material was surprising to me.
Yeah, especially considering the amount of information that we have from the prior survey did not really lend to them having a whole lot there to go ahead and eat and figure out.
No, the fish seem to be good, but everything else I'm very dubious of.
I mean, humans just randomly, like, we found out things were poisonous by eating them, so I guess that was
We
their
also
strategy.
evolved on the same planet.
I know. I'm just they could chemically analyze things, I guess, right? They do that?
There's so many things in life that we eat or whatever that legitimately it would be interesting to go back and find out who lost the bet to go figure out that we could do this.
Yep.
Like, oh yeah, see that cow over there? Larry, go try what's coming out of that. That looks interesting.
No. Let it stay in the bucket for a month.
Yogurt.
Oh, I forgot about this. Anyone got a spoon?
Yeah.
There's always that's why we do need a certain part of the population to be willing to do the stupid things so that we can figure out what we are allowed to do. Now we have science to help us with that process. But earlier on, no, you needed the Larrys to go out and lick the side of that one thing and find out, that caused some really weird feelings in me.
Oh, jeez. We are not advocating you licking things, people. Don't do that.
Well,
let Larry
maybe
do it.
you're not.
Always forage responsibly. I know a forager influencer, and her sign-off is always "Happy snacking, don't die."
That's good.
I am not built for that kind of life. I am built to go to the grocery store.
Yeah. I plan on in the apocalypse just building a pirate raid that just goes and finds the hidden food storage in all the houses nearby. Like that's the plan. And Mad Max all the
have food
pantries.
storage? Isn't that like a thing?
It is. It's a big thing here in Utah. A lot of people were taught and trained to have a year's worth of food. It's like you have a 72-hour kit, and then you have a year's worth of supplies. The thing is, and I mean this in all honesty, most people won't know what to do with their kit because it's like we have 200 pounds of flour in our basement, and they don't know what to do with it. We'll add water to it, and then it makes pancakes, right? That's how that works, right?
I think I've only got like 75 pounds of flour, but I feel that.
Yeah.
But you know what to do with it, Kit.
I do know what to do with it. You make focaccia.
So what do you guys think about, so I want to talk about Kitty Ping and her daughter Windblossom. Like, how do you feel about that whole situation? Because it's a situation. Kitty dies. And then
I wanted more from Kitty.
I did too, actually. She was a character I wanted to spend time with.
Yep.
Unlike Avril, we could have gotten rid of her and had more Kitty.
I would have so much preferred Kitty to Mendon.
Yes.
I think with Kitty, especially with Kitty, is that I don't know. I never really got connected to it. I never connected to those characters in any way. It was like, oh, they're going to be the ones who make the dragons work. Like that's really my whole connection to them. More might have made me give a stronger connection to them, but that was pretty much, I was like, these are the ones who are going to make the dragons work.
And that is pretty much Kitty's entire contribution to the book.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
She makes the dragon embryos and then promptly dies.
I have served my purpose.
Yeah.
But then you have Windblossom, and she won't use her grandma's notes. She goes off on like a different thing. And like that was so strange to me. I'm like, but your grandma just did it. You just do what she did. You don't need to reinvent the wheel.
Well, that's kind of the thing. Like, Windblossom saw that the dragons, they worked. They hatched. They were done. No further adjustments required. Her grandmother made a masterpiece that she wasn't really able to dabble in. So she did her own thing.
But make more dragons instead of your weird tunnel things that you make.
Okay, I don't want to spoil too much, but I actually like the later crazy photophobic things that she made. I actually like them. And later books went on to expand them.
Yeah, no, I know they come back. I just
Well, they also existed before this. So like this is their origin story too.
Right. No, I know.
Yeah.
I'm just saying
They do get given like primary focus though in some of the later books. Like it's the whole point of the book.
okay. Well, I'm just saying make some more dragons while you're at it.
I don't think she could.
Even with having
grandmother. Go ahead.
No, that's we were making the exact same point, but she gave her the recipes. It's just that she's not capable of making the recipe.
She doesn't know what to do with the flour in the basement.
Is she? I guess that's kind of the question. Is it just that this is done so we can hand this off to someone else to be in charge of to do this, so that I can then continue and work on my own legacy, which is going to be the photophobic.
Well,
tunnel dragons.
Tunnel dragons, yeah.
I think that she thought you can hand this off to natural selection at this point.
Okay.
You can hand this off to actual living dragons producing and...
No, because we don't know if they can reproduce yet.
We don't know, but she had faith.
That means you need to make more dragons.
She had faith.
She put on some good music and saw they got the twinkle in their eye. It'll be fine.
No, I totally disagree. She should have been she could do her own thing as well.
I mean, if she just copied, and we don't know if they can reproduce, it's also not going to be a long-term solution.
Yeah, but they can.
She was taking the long view with the only geneticist left to the colony that could do a project, and she thought her project had merit.
Okay.
I think even on that side of things, a second batch might have been a good idea.
Yes, exactly. A second batch or maybe a third.
Just a couple there, and
we don't know how many materials they had, and like if they would have had time
for her to make her weird dragon things that she made that were not dragons.
I think you just don't like her creations. I think you think they're not worth anything.
No, that's not what I think.
You keep putting them down.
Sure, I hate them. You're right, Kip.
That's right. Fly that flag.
I just don't like Windblossom. I think she has like a insecurity complex of some sort, and that's problematic for me.
She was never trained by the Eridani like her grandmother was.
Whatever. I think she's a nut. She's a loon, and she created crazy tunnel dragons.
And I think that's what the colony thinks about her. That's for sure.
It's true. And I agree.
I disagree.
Okay.
I think she had a good plan. And I think that she did the most she could with her limited resources and time.
Okay.
Because the whole place did end up getting evacuated because of a volcano.
That came out of nowhere.
No, it came out of the initial survey. The seismic activity came out of nowhere.
So that is a question. Why did they build the landing where they built landing? Like right next to it?
Apparently because they couldn't flatten Earth.
That's I think they mention in the early chapters, they talk about that landing was just basically the best place that they could set everything down and have space to work. Because nothing else was there. It was like, all right.
It was the only place they could have all 6 shuttles down at the same time, apparently, while also having non-frigid temperatures. Because apparently there's only 3 spots on the whole continent they could have landed.
Yeah.
Parking on Pern has been an issue from the start, is all we're going to say.
It makes no sense. Like that.
There's a lot of time spent on like, oh, we gotta like park these sleds haphazardly so the gig can't take off without someone noticing.
Yeah.
And they just keep talking about it, keep talking about it. And then no, she just captures the gig when it was about to take a regularly scheduled launch.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. It's so weird.
Yep. Which is the smart way to do it anyway. I mean, that's literally the Jack Sparrow style of stealing a ship. Just wait till it's about to go and take it over.
Yep. No guards, because this is a utopia that doesn't lock doors.
Yeah.
But we've already shown that it's not a utopia and that people should really be locking their doors, like way before this happens. They've been there for 8 years. They haven't figured out that people aren't.
Nope. And when thread happens, if you don't show up, there's no real consequences other than you don't have your vote in their like pseudo democracy.
Yeah.
And it's not a democracy. They pretend, but it's really not.
They take a couple important votes every now and then.
And then Admiral what's his face,
whose terms are just kind of set by somebody.
Yeah.
But are set by the most respected scholar of jurisprudence.
And it can be changed so quick. Literally, when thread falls, like, by the way, I think we should reinstate this prior government setup we got. Everyone hands up. Who's good with this? Who's good with this idea? And we'll give it to these two, right? Yeah, these two. They did a good job before. Let's just do that. Let's reset and go back to that. We're good. Everyone good? Hands up. All right, we're good. Go. Shut up, Ted. Shut up, Ted.
We don't have to talk to Ted anymore, okay? We already decided that.
Somebody shut Ted up. And his neighbors have to like drag him back to his seat.
Well, I kept waiting in that whole sequence where he keeps yelling out and about sending for help and everything. I'm like, at a certain point, if in a different type of setup, there is someone like a bailiff or someone who's security in the area who would walk him and like take him out. He's disrupting everything here. No, his voice has to be heard and everything.
His corporal punishment is forbidden, and that includes imprisonment.
Yeah,
apparently.
We believe in passive aggressive death penalty. So
it's like that whole thing. I'm like, how have you been dealing with just normal issues that come up in a group of people.
Nope.
Like
the penalty is you lock someone out of stores.
I guess.
And then they break in.
They've been here for 8
Actually,
years.
they break in before they're locked out. Never mind.
Yeah.
They're not locked out because nobody has locks.
Yeah.
Okay, so that went off the rails a little bit.
So did Pern's judicial system.
They don't have one. That's the issue. They just make things up as they go along.
What was it that they said the law was there for? It was just to argue about so basically property rights, and to argue about contract enforcement. Those are the only two things the judicial system on Pern is there to do.
So there's going to be no murder or rape or anything. That's just all going to go away because humans don't do that all the time. And like, have they looked at history? Like,
if you give everyone their own land, they don't have problems anymore.
Yeah. Okay.
They're just off on their own. They have their own autonomy out there to do what they choose, what they want. So
this is like some kind of weird libertarian fantasy, but also it's kind of communist because they have the stores. It's just very.
Yep.
If socialism and libertarianism had a baby, this is what it would look like.
Exactly.
It's libertarianism is what it is. Yeah.
But they have the communist element too with the stores. Like that's what I'm saying. I think Ryan's onto something. This
and
is
a little bit of like
and communism
aristocracy.
Get together. Pern's government happens. I love it.
Yeah, they had communist element with the stores, but they also had like a bit of a built-in class system by the charterers versus the
right. Yeah, they did.
Professionals. Yeah.
And trying to deal with everything, yes, with the stores, having no economy in the sense of, other than bartering, like they said, oh yeah, we use bartering, that's already a thing, but like no economic system whatsoever. Ooh, that's gonna bite you in the butt eventually.
While also having mining outposts that are essential for the survival of the colony.
Yeah.
Right. Yep.
Yeah. And beaches of diamonds.
It reminds me of Meet the Robertsons and the dinosaurs. Like, I have a big head and really little arms, but I don't think this was very well thought out.
Master.
I feel like if you're going to build a colony, you need to think these things out a bit more.
Right?
Yeah. Just saying
I strongly think that they talk a lot about how hard it was to get their charter approved back on Earth. And I'm like, yeah, no duh.
It wasn't hard enough.
Some guy in some, like the closest thing to a central planner that they've got in there looked at this and went, oh, you're all dead.
You're all dead. And I guess you want to take this planet way out there? Sure. Fine. Do what you want. You're paying for it? Fine. Have fun.
Yeah. We don't have to hear about this, right?
No.
Unfortunately, because of Ted, that they do have to eventually hear about it because he sent out the homing thing.
I mean, no one says they have to listen to it.
Yeah. Oh, what's that sound for help? Oh no.
Oh no. Oh. It's a we told you so. Oh great. I think we'll wait a bit longer until, that's actually in an economically viable part of the galaxy of the human expansion front.
So I'm feeling really bad because I actually really did enjoy this book, but we are just dragging it so hard right now. It's a lot of fun.
The themes deserve to be dragged. But
the dragons are cool.
The dragons are cool. And when I was reading this as a kid, it was a wonderful little explanation of how everything on Pern started.
Right.
And how this colony went so wrong.
This kind of goes back to a point you made earlier about when you were talking about reviewing and how you read things. This book does not read as well to someone who is critically breaking down themes and concepts and ideas this way. But if you are just going through the storyline, it's very enjoyable to watch the development, to watch these characters kind of faltering. Will it all make sense? No. You'll probably in the back of your head go, that doesn't entirely make sense. But you're not going to at any point in time go, that was just so stupid. There's nothing there. It's not bad in that sense at all. You're right. I wouldn't have a problem handing this to someone to read who I knew would fit the Pern genre, like who really wants to read about Dragon Riders. Like, yeah, it'll take you a while to get there, but you'll like this.
Yeah, I mean, it's fun. It is fun. And they have I like the empathic bonds that we talked about that they have with their
Yes.
dragons and all that kind of stuff. And
Well, and I love the fact that this empathic bond is set up most of the time, at least now I should say, maybe not throughout all history. Something like this, we get the How to Train Your Dragon storyline where it is, they're dangerous, they're a terrible thing, and it's the one person who bucks the system, finds out, oh no, there are these kind-hearted things, and we form a bond, and now we're all going to ride dragons, and it's great. I appreciated that at the beginning, this was like, no, from the immediate imprint, these little dragonettes there's no real danger to us from there's no danger, like they're aware of it a little bit. They're like, we don't know, if we make them big, maybe they'll eat us. Like that's about as much thought as they gave that concept, but
they'll eat the sheep.
Yeah, exactly.
They do eat the sheep. That would be really annoying as a shepherd.
You just have to change your economy scale, figuring out there. Again, we're falling back into these challenges of trying to
exactly like how there's really literally no way they could keep these things fed without that I can see. Like they're so big.
Unless they can go fishing.
Oh, that's true. I guess. Then
start pulling all those things out.
They start eating the dolphins.
Oh no.
That's why there's no dolphins later. They eat all the dolphins.
No, if I've learned anything from this episode and from this book is that if there's any future plans to try and build a utopia outside of Earth, the setup, we need to be on the committee to at least point out how stupid some of these things that they might think about are doing. They're like, please bring us in. We'll let you know that's just not feasible. We'll listen. We'll do that.
Yeah. And if you're going to set up a landing site or volcanoes, set up some more seismic sensors, or maybe leave everyone in cold sleep for a while you look at the planet and make sure which is actually the best point to land. If you have indefinite cryo suspension, use it. Be smart.
Poor book.
Oh man.
I'm so sorry. Anne. I really did have fun when I read it.
I also had fun, and I totally get that that's not how people would actually use cryo suspension. They'd be like, no, planet now.
Yeah. I'm on out and I'm not going back in.
These people seem like a very special bunch, and they will not have truck with cautious studies and surveys. No, they're just going to go down on the surface and start working.
They couldn't even get a judicial system working. You think they take account seismic stuff? I mean, basic human governance.
They mention it once. They mention seismic studies once, and then they're like, "Oh no, a volcano happened."
It just happens to happen during Threadfall. I mean,
yeah,
everything compounding.
Threadfall happens every 3 days. That's a pretty good. That's a pretty good probability. 1 in 3.
No, what I mean is the volcano blows up at the same time that the planet with the weird thread stuff.
Oh yeah.
Shows up.
But that also lasts 40, 50 years, right?
I mean, I guess, but it happens to be the same 40 or 50 years. Volcanoes don't blow up for thousands of years.
This colony is doomed.
They're all dead.
I mean, eventually they are, and then we get the fantasy Dragonland where they don't remember how to make clear glass. The colony had to fail spectacularly to make the rest of the series make sense.
Yes, it does. It really does, because it's basically fantasy Dragonland. It's not science fiction at all. So, and Jeff had a question about that.
Does that mean it? I think this is interesting because knowing that it is fantasy Dragonland, it is that sort of setup, but we know that they come from this origin. Is this the right choice for Anne to say that this is the origin of the world, to come from the science background, or is it just kind of is it cool? Is it a good twist, or would it have been better to say, no, let's just talk about Pern's, Pern has always been this way. Is this a good way to adjust that?
I like it. I really like it. I think that as a premise, it's fantastic. Science fantasy is where I love to live. And genetically engineered dragons that have basically lost touch with their science fiction roots and have become their whole own culture with the system of holds and weirs and very weird impressioning rituals and very weird sex flight rituals.
I mean, that's why I want a dragon.
having that all come back into there's a rogue planetoid that's dropping a microhedral spore onto this planet every so often when it's not passing through the Oort cloud. I like that. I like that combination because often fantasy is so small. It's focused on one continent. You rarely get a fantasy that's aware that it's a planet.
Yeah. No, I definitely agree with that. There are the few instances I can think of where they try and expand larger outside of that. It's been done, and it's one of those things where occasionally I think things like Wheel of Time, Shan Chan, this other group out there that's coming back in. It's like, oh, okay, that you don't actually explore the whole world. It's just they come into your point of view. They come into your wow, perspective. Thank you. Simple words. Simple words do not come to me until at least 11 o'clock.
If you've ever listened to any episode I'm on, like I have many issues with words.
But like you don't usually see fantasies that actually take a planetary scale. You don't see that blending of science fiction and fantasy, which makes the universe feel big.
Yeah.
Definitely not in fantasy. Sure. No. And definitely usually not in something with dragons. And Brandon Sanderson is an exception.
Yeah, I was just going to say he's the only exception I can really think of that makes you feel like it's a whole planet. And that's not even all his books. That's only some of his books.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because, Elantris doesn't feel. Anyway, we're off topic again.
I'm sorry that you brought me on. That was naturally going to happen.
It's normal. It's normal. Okay, so Jeff asks, Dragonsdawn marks the turning point of how overtly sci-fi the Pern series is. Do you prefer the more pseudo-fantasy books that precede it, or the harder sci-fi that follows? Are there harder sci-fi books that follow this?
There is actually a harder sci-fi book that follows it, and it is my favorite in the series.
Okay.
Which book is it?
All the Wares of Pern.
Okay.
Should I read it?
Spoilers, they rediscover landing.
Under a lava flow?
Under a lava flow. Yep.
Of course they do.
Because most of the Pern books take place only on the northern continent. They've abandoned the southern continent. They don't remember that they were ever there. And they say no, that place is forbidden. And
why?
But eventually they reach a level of technology. I think the major reason that it's forbidden is because of dangerous cats.
Come back. I was wondering if they came back.
Yep, dangerous cats and unknown illnesses.
Unknown illnesses?
Yeah. The southern continent has a different environment which has evolved viruses and bacteria separately from the northern continent, and people aren't ready for it, immunologically speaking.
Okay. So it really is sci-fi.
Yeah.
Yeah. I like my dragon fantasy, I think. But I did like this book. And so anything else before we wrap up? Anything?
I would just say we've mentioned it a couple times already. This is, while we have dragged some concepts in here, I do think that some of those things that we're pointing out are intentional by McCaffrey to showcase this isn't perfect. Like what you're saying, if we were to, if she were listening, she'd be like, yeah, no, you're exactly right. There's a reason this failed. And I set it up that way, like this setup here. It's part of the book. That's not necessarily a criticism of the book. It's a criticism of human nature being stupid in the scenario that I've set up. And that's 100% accurate to do that.
Yeah.
I would say that if you are someone who tends to read a book and break down themes and concepts, realize that there's a lot in this book that is going to frustrate you because of the way people react to it and whether or not it makes sense. But it works inside the premise. It's not a flawed premise. It's just that the people are definitely flawed in their attempts and their approach.
You do have to wonder, how many of these people have extreme PTSD, and it's just overriding their common sense, overriding their rationality. Because Emily Bull was apparently a governor during wartime for 5 years under siege, and maybe that's why she doesn't want to have to ever do extreme punishments again. Maybe that's why she doesn't want to be condemning anyone, because she's already done so much. A lot of the, in the earlier colony section in the beginning, it says a lot of people on this expedition came here to forget things they had seen and things they had done. And so you do have to kind of wonder how many of these people are just reacting badly to their past trauma or overreacting.
Yeah.
And then you add a couple natural disasters in, including one of which the thread is extremely scary.
Yes, it's a terrifying thing for sure.
Terrifying. It will denude a planet.
Which is why the planet doesn't.
We're gonna start a new circle if you go back on this. It's gonna be just a big cycle.
But like a combination of human errors and natural disasters caused the extinction of memory.
I was gonna say that's why you end up with Fantasy Dragonland. From the super high tech to Fantasy Dragonland.
Takes a lot for that to happen.
It does.
And we see it all unfold.
Exactly. Beautiful, glorious.
Though there are some other books. For example, there's a book that focuses on the dolphins of Landing as well.
Oh. So the dragons don't eat the dolphins.
I mean, maybe. Who knows? I'm not going to spoil anything. But there is a book that focuses on the dolphins.
I seriously totally forgot there were dolphins in this book.
It's set contemporaneously with this one. It's at the same time.
Okay. That's cool.
But it tells the story of what's his name? I'm gonna call him Kevin.
Acceptable.
Kevin the dolphin.
Yeah, I'm gonna no, not the dolphin trainer.
Oh, okay. I was gonna say one of the dolphins is literally called Bessie, so I mean, why not?
He's a minor character in this book, but he's the main character in the other book.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
So go enjoy SeaWorld of Pern. Following Kevin, the dolphin trainer.
Yep. And like then there's a whole nother book which talks about the supplies that got dropped off the side of the boat when they were going north.
There's a book about it?
There's a book. There's basically a whole book about it. Yep.
Oh my god.
There's a plague involved, and the only solution are those supplies.
So they have to find them.
They have to find them. Yeah.
Okay. I don't know about that. I don't know if that's what
I
want to read.
It's not rushing to the top of the TBR.
It's not. It's not. There's already a Pern plague book, and that one's so much better.
I'm reading Hogfather after I get off the phone with you guys. I think I'll be good.
Yeah.
Skipping the supply treasure hunt Pern.
Pratchett will be a good step.
And I'll be going to Sanderson's YA Universe Skyward.
Oh, actually, I forgot that came out, didn't it? Oh.
Yep, Cytonic just came out.
I was at the event last night for the release. I think my book just got delivered to my door literally like 5 minutes ago, so I'll go open that up.
So we should let you go so you can read it.
Yes. That's
okay.
So thanks so much for joining us for our discussion of Dragonsdawn by Anne McCaffrey. You can find us on the Legendarium Discord. The invite link is at legendarium.com. We are also on Twitter at Green Team Pod. Join us in supporting the Legendarium via Patreon. Thanks, Craig, for loaning us a little corner of your media empire, and for Horizon Brave for starting this all. Thank you, Kip and Ryan. And I'm Little Red Book. Talk to you next time.
Goodbye.
Bye.
See ya.